Welcome, everybody, to Black and Gold Weekly. It's a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube and brought to you in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. I am your host, John, and I am here once again with my friend Danny as we will be talking Boston Bruins hockey here today. Danny, thank you so much for coming back on. Great to have you as always, and you ready to talk some Bruins hockey?
I am the Eero Vakanainen number as far as this show goes, I
Yep.
believe, and it's hard to believe we're that far in episodes. I like to say we as if I had any major contributions to this, but it's mostly you, and it's been a heck of a ride for sure.
You're always contributing now as we got you on every week. It's been a lot of fun getting to talk hockey. And we're on episode 58. Before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them, so all their support is greatly, greatly appreciated. They allow us to do this each and every week. And also want to turn your attention down to the description of the video. There are 3 links in the description. If you're in the market for Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any of the 32 teams, or NCAA college apparel, it would be really, really awesome if you could check out those links in the description. Wide variety of products, all the usual stuff like hats and jerseys and shirts and all of that, but also a great selection of accessories, all team branded, that you can get representing your favorite teams throughout the NHL and college. So, again, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated if you guys could check that out and shop that way if you were in the market for any of those things. But let's get into it now, Danny. We got quite a bit to talk about today. We got another week of action in the books for the Boston Bruins and another fairly successful week overall. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some trade deadline stuff as we are less than 2 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline. And then we'll look ahead to the Bruins' upcoming week of games and talk about those as well. Just so you guys know, we record this on Wednesday. You guys don't see this until Friday, but we're recording on Wednesday. So everything that we say is based off of where we're at now on Wednesday morning. And then some stuff might happen to change a little bit by the time it gets to Friday, but some stuff will definitely still be relevant and the same. So I guess, Danny, will start by looking at these last few games. So we have to go back to when we recorded last week's show. They played Vegas on Thursday night. They played Columbus on Saturday night. And then they played LA on Monday night. Overall, the Bruins go 2-0-1 in these 3 games. They get 5 out of a possible 6 points. I guess we really can't complain about 5 out of 6 points.
No, and especially when you look at this ending stretch here, you want to finish strong on the regular season. And just to start off the trip, Vegas was one of the games I was kind of worried about. I know me and you talked about this on and off the air. Vegas was a tough team. The Bruins had just finished a good portion of their West Coast road trip, and Vegas was going to be a key game, and they showed up in this one in a big way. Probably one of the best games I've seen them play all season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Last week during the show, I think we said, we always kind of guess the record for the week and try and, what do we think would make a successful week? And I think we both kind of expected 2-1 from the Bruins for this set of games, and they actually beat that. They went 2-0-1. So nice to see them with no regulation losses. Vegas was a game that we both thought they might lose. And boy, did they not. They did not come close to losing this game. This, I think, was one of the best all-around games that I've seen the Bruins play this season. The game in Boston against the Colorado Avalanche that they won 5-1 is kind of the other big game that stands out to me as their best performances. But this game in Vegas was another spectacular performance. 5-2 win over a pretty tough opponent in the Golden Knights. And Craig Smith with the hat trick this game for the Bruins. Some obviously some great production from that line again with Charlie Coyle, Craig Smith, and Trent Frederick. Trent Frederick had 3 assists in this game, getting his offense ramped up a little bit. Pasta had a couple of goals as well. Swayman was very, very strong in net, stopping 34 out of 36 shots against. This was just a great overall team win for the Bruins.
This was a great overall team win, and even one of the goals that Swayman got scored on, if I recall, was a Jack Eichel breakaway, and there's not too many goalies that would be able to stop that. Um, but when I looked at this game, I was really impressed with the play of Trent Frederick. As you mentioned, 3 assists, and we had talked about him a couple of shows ago about as a guy who really needed to step up and kind of not help out the Bruins because I don't want to sound like he was being lazy, but produce more, make more of an impact. And he has done that over this past week or so. He really has stepped up his offensive game, and it started with the 3 assists against Vegas last Thursday.
Yeah, Freddie's been playing awesome, and that whole line has just been unbelievable. Honestly, it's been going on for weeks now, and since this line's been put together, and I'm still kind of in awe of how good they are. Like, I was not expecting this level of production from the Coyle, Smith, and Frederick combination, and now not only have they produced at a really high level, but they've produced at a really high level for a substantial amount of time. It's not like they just got hot for a week and then kind of trailed off. Like, this has been weeks now of this being a phenomenal line for the Bruins. And I mean, I see no reason to even think about breaking these guys up because they have played so well together. And that continued again this week in, most of these games that the Bruins have played.
When we think of lines these days, we think of, that high-powered superstar scorer or that one outright goal scorer on each line. When you look at the fourth line for the Bruins, it's a bunch of players who do the little things well and complement each other well. They're not going to score 50 goals a season, but they do just enough to be able to complement each other, and it's working together to fit and make one very productive line, and I have absolutely loved what I've seen from the Coyle line, and I quite frankly think it's brought out the best. I know I've said in Coyle before, but in everybody.
Yeah, I mean, Frederick played, I think, what was the best game of his career against Vegas. Coyle is producing really, really well now with these guys, and Craig Smith has finally gotten going. Like, obviously, this hat trick, all of a sudden, he goes from 6 goals on the season to 9, and it's still overall been a pretty down year for Craig Smith, but to finally see him start to produce at that level and put some pucks in the net, that's really good to see. He's now up to 11 goals on the season after the last few games, and he's up to 25 points. So is it the best year for Craig Smith? No. Has he put 25 in the net? No. But he's up to 25 points in 50 games, and we're starting to see some more production out of him that we wanted to see all year long, but it's better late than never.
And it's been over the last month or so. I think it was the game against Nashville in January where he scored a pair of goals. And that kind of not completed, but started his trajectory towards finding his offensive game a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's carrying over into the months of February and March. And I use this phrase a lot, but finding his groove. I mean, it looks like he's really comfortable. He's starting to shoot the puck more. And that was one of his, calling cards, I think. He was never one to turn down a shot, and now they're finding the back of the net. It's almost like a kicker making a field goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the net looks huge, and when the kicker is on, he's on. That's the case for Craig Smith right now.
Yeah, and he certainly is on. He's playing some really, really good hockey. Boston picks up a big road win to close out the West Coast portion of their road trip on Thursday night, and that was obviously one of the more impressive games that we've seen from the Bruins this season. Then on Saturday night, they close out their road trip overall with a quick stop in Columbus after on the way back, obviously coming from the West Coast. And they hit up Columbus for the first time this season, playing against the Blue Jackets. And this was an interesting game. Definitely not the usual kind of games that we see from the Bruins. It ends up being a 5-4 high-scoring back-and-forth affair. But at the end of the day, the Bruins are able to get it done in the shootout, and they once again pick up the 2 points, and that's what matters the most.
And if I could go back and just add one more quick note about the Vegas game,
Yeah.
after the Vegas game, David Pastrnak had scored 23 goals since January 1st. So that just speaks to how much he's picked up his play and really kind of, been that superstar that we've been looking for. And we've talked about it on the show before. But switching to the Columbus game, this was a really interesting game. I thought the Bruins got a lot of shots early, but Columbus was just able to hang around. You know, I was able to watch the first two periods of the game, and I believe it was Swayman, right? Swayman was
Yep.
in net,
Yep.
and he played very well. I thought he was quick in his reaction time. He stayed square, and you know, the Blue Jackets have really started to surge over the past couple of weeks, and it's easy to see why. They were aggressive, they were able to find their shots, and the Bruins were just able to outlast them. Over shootout win, something that the Bruins have been getting better at recently, and this one was a fun one. I have to say, it was another fun game.
Yeah, this one certainly high scoring with it ending 5-4 in the shootout. And special teams played a big role in this game. The Bruins went 1 for 2 on the power play. Columbus went 2 for 3 on their power play chances. Boston's penalty kill has had some rough games this
Mm-hmm.
season where overall the penalty kill hasn't been bad, but there happens to just be like these few certain games where it's bad and they give up too many goals against. And this was another one where you can't allow Columbus to go 2 for 3 on the power play in a game like this.
No, and it almost kind of reminds me of the struggles that they had, a couple years ago. It was always kind of a very poor running joke that the Bruins might, might allow a shorthanded goal or their special teams were off or something like that, and it kind of reared its head again against Columbus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the end of the day, Bruins are able to squeak out the 2 points out of this one. Big time goal in the shootout from David Pastrnak, of course. During the game, Jake DeBrusk scores again for Boston. He gets his 15th goal of the season. He's really been producing well recently.
Mm.
Eric Hollis scores for Boston. Good to
He's
see him
been
get on the
producing well
score sheet.
recently. Yeah,
He's been
he's been
playing
producing
very
well.
well.
Yeah.
Craig Smith scores again. And of course, Patrice Bergeron, the captain, has had somewhat of a quiet season overall, but just very methodically and efficiently goes about his business. Gets his 16th goal of the year. Huge power play goal to put the Bruins in the lead in the third period. Now, unfortunately, they couldn't hold the lead because Jake Voracek scored at the end of the game. 3 seconds left in the third period. Voracek ties the game. And unfortunately, we're going to be talking more about these late period goals or late game goals that the Bruins are giving up because they did it against Anaheim and they lost with a few seconds left to Trevor Zegras and the Anaheim Ducks. Now they've done it again here against Columbus, allowing Columbus to tie the game with 3 seconds left to go in the third period. Luckily, though, the Bruins were able to recover and win this one in the shootout. And then we come now to our final game from this past week of action, and we get the LA Kings. And unfortunately, that trend is going to continue here with the Bruins giving up late goals. So, LA, we kind of knew that this was going to be a trap game going in for multiple different reasons. One, you have the Bruins returning home for after 2 weeks away on the road, long 6-game road trip. First game back on home ice, that's usually a trap game in itself. You also have the fact that the Bruins had destroyed the Kings the week before when they played in LA. 7-0 win for Boston, and you knew that LA was going to have a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder for this one. They were going to have that revenge factor. They were going to really want to come out and make sure that they played a quality game against Boston on Monday, and they end up doing that. This was a very hard-fought, close battle for really the entire night.
This did not look like the same team that the Bruins defeated 7-0. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
And there were some positives in this game. There was a Frederick goal again. He's been picking up his offensive play like we talked about it was a quick snapshot, and that was able to help the Bruins kind of pace the scoring. There was one play that I wrote in my notes here where Jake DeBrusk crashed the net, and
Yep.
he flew and he crashed the net, and it was just another example of how strong he's played. Not only is he scoring goals, but he's trying to get into the dirty areas and, cause disruption to the opposing goaltenders. So
Yep.
that was great to see. Um, Boston did a good job of spending time in the LA zone on the Bruins power play, which is what you would want ideally, but with the Bruins special teams struggling a little bit throughout this last week, it was encouraging to see that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Able to kill off the penalties against and outshoot the Kings in this game 32-28. So not a huge margin in the shots, but Boston still did outshoot them. This Frederick Smith Coyle line again. Monster game. Trent Frederick scores the first goal, assisted by Coyle and Smith. Craig Smith scores the Bruins' second goal, assisted by Coyle and Riley. So Coyle with a 2-point night, 2 primary assists in the game. Smith with a 2-point night with a goal and an assist. Frederick with a goal. Just really good performance from that line again here for the Bruins. Now, unfortunately, Charlie Coyle kind of had 3 primary assists in the game. Unfortunately, though, the last one was on an LA Kings goal, and that was the goal that ended up costing the Bruins the win. It was Andreas Athanasiou stealing a pretty ill-advised backhand pass from Charlie Coyle in overtime. Results in a breakaway back the other way, and Athanasiou scores the game winner in OT. So Coyle probably should get an assist on that one too, but unfortunately it was for the wrong team. And that kind of put a damper on what was a great night for Charlie Coyle in that line overall.
Yeah, it was a tough way to end, and it seems like the Bruins lately have not been able to secure the game in the final seconds. And it also kind of dampened a little bit a good game, what I thought, from Linus Ullmark. I thought he played pretty well.
Yep.
He gave up 3 goals, made 25 saves on 28 shots, but the Kings were, constantly shooting at the net and, keeping plays in the Bruins zone. So I thought he played well because he's been a little bit shaky as of late. And I thought, even though, with the end result, this was a decent game for him.
I agree. I thought Ullmark had a pretty strong performance in this one, as did Cal Peterson down at the other end for LA.
Absolutely.
Both goaltenders had very, very strong games in this one, but Ullmark, this was a game that he probably should have won, and his numbers should have been better. He ends up with an .893 save percentage. It feels like he played a lot better than that. But the OT goal just kind of results in the loss and results in his save percentage dipping under 900 again. And it's really not even his fault. It was a clean breakaway for Athanasiou in overtime. There's a good chance that puck ends up in the back of the net there. That's not really on the goaltender. But another late third period goal here, just like the Columbus game, just like the Anaheim game. LA ties this game with less than 30 seconds to go in the third period. The Bruins had a 2-1 lead with 30 seconds to go in the third period, and they give up the tying goal to Trevor Moore with 26 seconds left. And it was kind of a fluky goal. It was one of those shots that was a long shot in that got blocked down in front. It just bounced to this over to the side of the crease where Ullmark couldn't get over fast enough, and Trevor Moore was just sitting there waiting for it and able to put it in what was essentially an open net. And it was just kind of a bad luck, bad bounce goal. But again, for the third time in the last 4 games, Boston gives up a late third period goal that either ties the game for the opposing team and allows it to go to overtime, or straight up in the Anaheim game case, straight up loses the game. But they've got to stop giving up goals with less than 30 seconds left.
Finishing games is something that you're going to need to do if you want to advance in the playoffs, and Boston has not been able to do that lately. This is a little bit of a concerning trend. Yes, they had a good week overall, and I don't want to sound like I'm nitpicking, but they need to learn, or not learn, but they need to be better at finishing games. They
Yep.
need to play complete. It's almost like they kind of relaxed a little bit towards the end of the third period, and they can't relax at any point in any sort of game in the playoffs. And, this is a trend that I'm going to be watching, because if this continues, then that is a legitimate cause for concern. Right now, I'm a little mildly concerned.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you cannot do in the playoffs. If you want to win playoff games against top quality opponents, you cannot be doing this in the playoffs. It's something that needs to be fixed. And obviously some of it's been bad luck. I mean, certainly the LA goal with 26 seconds to go. I mean, it was a bad bounce. It got knocked down in front of the net, and the puck was just kind of sitting there, and LA was the first to it. And it was just one of those fluky net front goals that happen sometimes. But the fact that this has happened in 3 out of 4 games, that is what kind of concerns me here, is that this has been happening repeatedly. It's not like it was one game, one bad bounce. That's just the way it goes sometimes. But the fact that it's repeatedly happening, Boston has got to finish out games better. I mean, they've gotten 5 out of 6 possible points, so it seems weird complaining. But you've got to make sure that you're finishing games here, and especially when you're playing quality opponents in the playoffs, you can't be giving up late period goals like that.
No, and we're kind of nitpicking because of the playoffs. If one goal with 20 seconds left could end a series,
Yep.
could give the opposition a series advantage, you know, we're looking at like the bigger picture here in the playoffs, and these are habits that cannot continue for the playoffs, because you know you don't get another chance in the playoffs too often. You don't get, oh, we'll get them tomorrow. Tomorrow could be the other team flying to wherever for their next playoff series, and you guys sitting at home.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Think about it this way, just as an example, and I'm not even going to use like an elimination game example, because obviously, if this were to happen in an elimination game, it would end your season. But say it's game 4 of a playoff series, and you're down 2 games to 1. So you really need this game 4 to even the series back up at 2. And you have a 3-2 lead with 30 seconds to go in the third period. And say Boston's playing the Florida Panthers. And Florida then all of a sudden, boom, scores with 25 seconds left in the third, ties the game up at 3. It goes to overtime. And then you're in OT, and Florida scores the game winner in overtime. All of a sudden, because of that goal with less than 30 seconds left, instead of it being a 2-2 series heading back to Florida, all tied up and kind of their backs a little bit against the wall, all of a sudden now it's a 3-1 Florida lead. They go back to home ice. They probably finish you off in game 5. And all of a sudden, like that, instead of it being a long, hard-fought series where the Bruins could potentially upset the Panthers, because of that one goal, all of a sudden now it's a 4-1 series win for the Panthers, and they easily walk through you in 5 games in round number 1.
One goal can completely change the
Yep.
course of a series,
Yep.
and this is why we're a little bit worried about these late game losses where the Bruins look like they tend to relax a little bit.
Absolutely. It can end up costing you an entire playoff series potentially. So it's something that's got to get cleaned up. There's no doubt about it. It's got to get cleaned up, and they've got to be able to finish these games when they have leads in the third period.
Absolutely, and like I said, I'll be watching this down the road as we enter the final couple weeks of the regular season here. I'll see if they get better or worse at holding leads, because holding leads is crucial.
Yes.
You can't make mistakes. We're now entering the point, as we get into the playoffs, where you can't make mistakes against these teams. These teams are going to pounce on those mistakes and turn them into points. So the Bruins definitely need to reverse the trend of, kind of relaxing, I'll say, late in games.
All right, so despite the trend of giving up too many late period goals here for Boston, they still have won 2 out of their last 3 games. They're 2-0-1. They've got 5 out of a possible 6 points from this past week. And overall, I mean, as a fan, I don't think you can really complain too much about getting 5 out of 6 points. I'll take that ratio every day of the week for sure.
Yeah, although it sounds like although
Yeah.
it sounds like we're complaining, but that's what we like to do here. But no, I mean overall, I think I'm very impressed with the way the Bruins have played. Really, honestly, I'll look at the bigger picture since the new year, right? They've
Yep.
really kind of kicked things into gear, and the each player is starting to look more comfortable, particularly that fourth line, as we talked about. And if this team can keep this pace up, they're going to be a fun team to watch in the playoffs. I mean, maybe they can make some noise. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But we are getting close now towards the playoffs, and we're also getting really close now to the trade deadline. That's what I want to talk about next here. Um, Trade deadline is now less than 2 weeks away. It's on Monday, March 21st. So we're, what, 12 days now away from the trade deadline.
Let's see.
Um,
11. Well, yeah, 11. Yeah.
so it's going to be
Er,
interesting to see here what Boston does. And obviously, everybody's kind of expecting the Bruins to make some moves, at least one move, probably maybe more than that. They've got a little bit of cap room to work with. And if they can trade Jake DeBrusk out, they'll have even more cap room to work with here. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But overall, what we've seen, there's lots of rumors going around, obviously, as there always is around deadline time. And what we've kind of seen has become a trend for Don Sweeney is for him to kind of go off the board a little bit with some of his moves, where everybody will talking about these certain players and the Bruins getting this guy or getting this guy, and then Sweeney kind of just pulls something completely out of nowhere and ends up going to get somebody that they weren't really expected to or nobody was really talking about. Do you kind of think that that happens again this year, or do you think that we're going to see them make a move for somebody that's kind of been rumored to be possibly going to the Bruins?
Off the board move is something that I would expect because honestly, all the pieces that we've ever thought would make sense for the Bruins at the trade deadline, with the exception of maybe Taylor Hall,
Yeah.
in the Sweeney era, it's never happened. That's why, as much as I would love a guy like Jacob Chitrin, I'm not getting my hopes up. I mean, there was a report out there earlier today where Nesson talked about some of his potential suitors, and I'm trying to look for the article right now, but it was like the Florida Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, playoff teams,
Yep.
and I can see Chitrin going there because those teams want to make the push. The Bruins do too, but they've never really had the fortitude to get it done, I guess.
Yeah, obviously, Jacob Chikrin is somebody that has been talked about a lot over the last few months. Coming from Arizona, 23 years old, very team-friendly contract for multiple more years beyond this year. So, obviously, it's a guy that I think a lot of teams would love to go out and get. I saw something this morning about 8 teams. I forget the exact article title,
Yeah,
but it
that's
was
what I was
eight
looking.
teams that are actively trying to go after Jacob Chikrin and get Chikrin, and it did say that the Bruins were one of them. So Chikrin would obviously be like a home run swing. Like that'd be a big home run swing for the Bruins if they were able to pull that off. I just don't know if the Bruins have the assets to match what a other team like maybe the Carolina Hurricanes or maybe the LA Kings or somebody like that who has a little bit more in their farm system, a little bit more as far as prospects go that could offer probably a better deal than what the Bruins can offer Arizona for Chikrin. I don't know if the Bruins can outbid teams like that.
I don't think so because, again, it goes back to development. I mean, prospect wise, there really isn't anybody that would maybe move the needle or give the Bruins enough ammunition to get Jacob Chikrin. So for that reason, I don't see the Bruins getting him. I hope somehow they do, but I don't feel like there's going to be any deadline splashes made. I think it's going to be a couple of minor moves, and the Bruins are going to roll with what they have. And thinking about it a little bit more, I don't know if that would necessarily be the worst thing if the depth scoring, as we like to say all the time,
Mm-hmm.
if the depth scoring didn't show up by now, then I would be like more gung ho to make a move. But I'm kind of hesitant to tinker with things right now. Do they need pieces? Yes, I believe they do. But what they have right now is also working.
Yeah, I definitely can see that where like you've got all of a sudden this Coyle line's playing great. You've got Eric Holla in the middle of Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak, and they're all producing pretty well offensively. Like all of a sudden now you're getting pretty good production. So how much of that do you really want to mess with? But at the same time, I think for the Bruins to be a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, I think they're not there yet. They've got to add. They've got to get some more talent, some bigger producers into this lineup for them to legitimately contend for a Stanley Cup. Because it's one thing to beat teams like Vegas, who's not having a stellar year this year, and beat Columbus and somebody like that. But it's another thing when you've got to play a 7-game series against the Florida Panthers or a 7-game series against the Tampa Bay Lightning and try and beat those teams, 4 out of 7 times. That's going to be a tough thing to do, and I don't think Boston has a team right now that can do that.
Which is why I'm wondering what they would get in a potential return for Jake DeBrusk. If there
Mm-hmm.
is one guy that I think they should deal
Yep.
right now, it's Jake DeBrusk. And what they get in that DeBrusk deal, I think, will be important for the Bruins, you know, moving forward. What if it's draft picks? Okay, like maybe, but I would love to see a player for player type of deal. Maybe you don't see those
Mm-hmm.
too much in sports these days. But I mean, Jake DeBrusk is really the only major move that I could see the Bruins making, and the return is something that I would be interested to see.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously he's still said that his trade request is still out there. It's still valid. Despite him playing really, really well over the last few weeks, he does still hope to be moved, and that's going to be a big key. What do they do with Jake DeBrusk, and if they're able to get a deal done, is it going to be something that improves the team this season? And I think that's going to be key for how far this Bruins team can go. If they can get something for him that does help the team now, then maybe they're able to go a little bit deeper than I'm expecting. But if they're not, maybe they just end up hanging on to him and try and trade him in the offseason when he's an RFA, which you probably won't get nearly as much in return for if you wait that long. And the other option, obviously, would be um, uh, just maybe trading him for a draft pick or something like that. And if that's the case, that doesn't really help your team right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how the DeBrusk situation is resolved here. But I think that's going to be kind of a big key of this deadline for the Bruins.
The Bruins are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because DeBrusk is producing really well right now. So as much as we've been talking about the Bruins, trading DeBrusk at the deadline, I could see them honestly trading him in the offseason and holding on to him because he is producing right now. It would be one thing if, he wasn't doing anything, but right now he's as hot as he's ever been, I think, in his career. And so I could see the Bruins thinking short term right now. He's playing well. Let's keep him and trying to trade him in the offseason. But I don't think that would be the best move for the Bruins as far as their future goes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you want to wait. I think you got to get something done here and to see, if anything, his value right now should be high. Like this should be as
Hmm.
high of a trade value as you're probably going to get for Jake DeBrusk because he's playing so well right now. He's got 15 goals on the season. He's showing that he can still, put the puck in the net. At least when it comes in spurts, that's the thing with him is he's so
Yeah.
streaky, but he's showing that he can at least put the puck in the net and has that ability. So, if anything, I think now is the time to trade him where you're going to get a better return than you will if you trade him at any other point.
Yeah, it's kind of a difficult situation, and I'll be interested to see what they do. I really will be because, you know, um, the Bruins have been known to make minor moves at the deadline, and now they have a chance to make a big one. Will they do it? Time will tell.
Yeah, so you talk about them maybe not making such a splash move and maybe just kind of more of like a lower key, smaller depth type of move. A name that has
Mm.
come up over the past couple of days with the Boston Bruins is Jacob Middleton from the San Jose Sharks. And this is a really interesting idea here, but he's a depth defenseman, 6'3", 219 pounds. He's 26 years old. He's played 39 games with the Sharks this year, has 8 points, a +2 rating, and 62 penalty minutes. He's a tough guy. Really, really tough player. And Boston, there's been a lot of talk about Boston trying to add some toughness, trying to add some more grit to the lineup, particularly on the back end. Well, he would certainly do that. And overall, I like Jacob Middleton. I don't know where he would fit in the Boston lineup. That's kind of my problem with this whole Middleton idea, is where would he fit? Because he's another left shot D-man. We already have Grzelcyk, we already have Riley, and we already have Forbort. And honestly, Jacob Middleton I don't think is all that different from Derek Forbort. They're both like 6'3", 220, bigger, slower defensemen who kind of block shots, hit. They're defensive defensemen. They don't bring a lot offensively. Like, Middleton to me is very similar to Derek Forbort, except he's more of an enforcer, more of a fighter, more of a guy who's going to be into it physically. Like, Forbort can drop the gloves if you need him to, but he's not like going to fight like 9 or 10 times a year. He's going to fight like maybe 2 or 3 times a year, where Middleton's more that guy that will fight 9 or 10 times a year. But in pretty much every other way, he's very similar to Forbort, in my opinion. And I don't really understand what this would add to the Bruins. And they don't really have an open slot right now on that left side unless you're really bringing in an upgrade on the back end in a top 4 role. But Middleton's a bottom pair guy. I don't see him really being that big of an upgrade on the left side, at least. So then I don't know. I'm just confused. What would the D pairs look like? Like, is Middleton going to come in and just be the 7th defenseman and kind of be your healthy scratch unless somebody gets injured and then moves into the lineup? Like, I don't really understand the point of that necessarily. I haven't seen enough of San Jose to know, can he play the offside? Can he play the right side? Like, could you put him in the lineup ahead of Clifton possibly? Because then that makes Cliffy your 7th D-man, which I think, again, is still a better spot for Clifton than being a regular in the lineup. Do you try and make Mike Riley move over to the right side? Because he's done that a couple of times this year, although I don't know if making Riley switch sides is necessarily going to be a great idea. He's actually kind of settled in and played well the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know where Middleton would fit in this lineup, where he's not a significant upgrade over what you already have.
I don't know either, and it almost seems like they would be making a move for the sake of making a move,
Yeah.
And you never want to do that either. And, he is very similar to Forbort. That's exactly what I was thinking of when you mentioned his name. I completely agree with you. This doesn't move the needle enough for me. And
No.
So I would just keep with what we have, because right now what we have is working. And I wouldn't try to move anything or, Middleton is a decent player, but he's not enough to, break up what the Bruins currently have. So for that reason, I wouldn't mind him being here, but I don't want to make moves just because we can for the sake of making moves, because it's the trade deadline. I want to make moves that will be able to help the Bruins, and this just seems like more of the same.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can't healthy scratch Derek Forbort. You're not paying $3 million a year to your 7th defenseman. So, like, what are you going to do with Middleton at that point? Unless somebody can move over and play the right side, which would then knock Clifton down to that 7th D role. I just don't see... I don't see the point. Like, if you're going to add a depth defenseman, it's got to be somebody that plays the right side. And that knocks Clifton down. And then you've got, McAvoy, Carlo, and new depth guy on your right side. And then you've got Grzelcyk, Riley, and Forbort on your left side. And now, if you're trading for a top 4 defenseman, somebody who's actually going to move the needle, somebody who's going to be a significant upgrade for the Bruins D-core overall, then I think it could be more so on the left side, because you're not going to move McAvoy or Carlo out of your top 4. So I would say it'd be a left shot defenseman if it's a top 4 guy, and then you can move, guys around accordingly after that. If it's going to be a significant enough upgrade and increase where it's worth doing, then sure, you go get a left shot guy in that role. But for a depth player, I think it's right shot, or you just kind of leave it as is, because the only guy I think that you can take out of your top 6 right now is probably going to be Connor Clifton, which again, right side D man. It's got to be a right side guy. Now maybe Middleton can play the offside. I haven't seen enough of San Jose to know if he's strictly stuck on the left side or if he can move to the right. If he can move to the right, then sure. Because then you have Forbert and Middleton as your bottom pair, if you're able to do that, if he can play that side. And honestly, that big physical bottom pair has worked very well for the Calgary Flames this year with Eric Goodbranson and Nikita Zadorov. So I wouldn't mind a Forbert Middleton bottom pair. I just don't know if he's capable of playing the right side.
If he is capable of playing the right side, that changes the game completely, because that physical line is something that the Bruins have needed. But if he isn't, then it would just be more the same. So I'm gonna kind of give an incomplete grade on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. We don't need another Derek Forbort, and that's not to diminish his skills. That's just to say that we need some differentiation in the lineup, and adding Middleton, I don't know if that would be a worthy enough move for the Bruins unless he can play the right side. If he can play the right side, then okay, then that move makes sense. But until we know definitively what he can do, this doesn't seem like a worthwhile pursuit for Boston.
Yeah, and again, this is all just a rumor. I mean, we don't know if if this is actually close to happening or anything like that. But he's just a name that's come up here in the rumor mill the past few days. So again, we'll have to see. Overall, though, what do you think? Like, if you could improve one position for the Bruins, what do you think their biggest need is at the deadline this year? Is it another defenseman? Is it a right winger? Is it a center? Like, if you could only pick one spot to improve this team, what would it be?
Probably another defenseman.
I agree, but I think it needs to be a bigger, it needs to be an upgrade. It can't just be another bottom pair guy.
Yeah, because when you look at the Bruins defense, I mean, they have been playing better, but as we saw in the playoffs last year, it only takes one injury. In the playoffs last year, it was Brandon Carlo.
Yep.
And then that entire side of the defense completely fell apart. I mean, Charlie McAvoy can't do it all by himself. In a hypothetical situation where Carlo is hurt again or something like that, God forbid. So I think the defense is somewhere that they need to upgrade. Goaltending, because if you upgrade the defense, a lot will follow suit. The goaltending plays better. We've seen that over these past couple weeks here. I mean, overall, the scoring depth, I think, has been really good over these past couple weeks. Mm-hmm. They're now starting to play like we thought they could play.
Yep.
So I think the one thing for me would be a defenseman.
I agree. I still think they need to add a D-man, but I think if it's got to be something that moves the needle. They can't just add a D-man and be like, okay, here's a bottom pair. Here's Jacob Middleton. Here's a bottom pair guy. Like, if you're gonna do that, I think it needs to be a right shot that will knock Clifton down to the 7th D role, and then at least kind of settles out your top 7 pretty well. But if you're gonna get a left shot, or if you're gonna get a bigger name guy, which could be either left or right shot, I'd really like to see them add a top 4 guy, and really significantly improve the defense. Like, if you're gonna improve the defense, make it a big improvement, not just like a depth move that's gonna be like, okay, it's fine, but we're not that much better than we were. I'd like to see them improve, like, with a bigger name, and obviously Chychrun would be like the home run swing, but somebody that can at least be a top 4 guy and play 20 minutes a night.
Because if they don't do that, it's going to be more of the same come playoff time, and
Yeah.
I'm sick
And
of
then if
watching
one
this
guy
movie.
gets hurt in the playoffs, boom, if Grizzlitt goes down, which
Yeah,
he's, injured right
unfortunately,
now.
yeah,
If Carlo goes down, I mean, if McAvoy goes down, they're done.
yeah,
He's their
yeah.
most important guy on the back end. But, you don't want to be in a situation where if one guy goes down, your season's over. And I think they need, if they're going to make a move on the back end for a left shot particularly, it's got to be a big name guy.
The thing about the Bruins, though, is that they've never been good at making moves until they absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, they won't add a defenseman, and then that'll show in the playoffs when somebody gets hurt. And then we'll see the same story again, like we saw in the playoffs
Last
last
year.
year.
Yep.
I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not wishing injuries on anybody, believe me. I want to see this Bruins team win. But the Bruins don't make moves unless their backs are against the wall or they really need, a position is glaring in terms of the weakness there. The Bruins have never been proactive at making moves, and I don't expect them to, be proactive at the deadline, honestly. I really don't.
So, if there was a depth defenseman out there that I would love the Bruins to get, and it's a right shot guy that honestly I would absolutely love for them to go out and make a move for, it would be Luke Schenn
Ooh, okay.
from the
I like that.
Vancouver Canucks. He's played 41 games with Vancouver this year. He's got 11 points. He's a +9 on a Canucks team that isn't all that great. And he's had a really really good season this year. He's had a really good season, and he's got a ton of playoff experience. He's won back-to-back cups in Tampa Bay. He played in Tampa in 2019, 2020, and then again last year in 2020, 2021. And
Mm,
he won the cup both years in Tampa. He's a depth guy. He's a third pair guy, but he's having a very, very solid season this year in Vancouver. He's physical. He can
yep,
add some toughness. He's had a few years
yep,
where he's had some pretty big penalty minute numbers. He's not afraid to drop the gloves. And he's got 11 points in 41 games this year. He's a
yeah.
former first-round pick backed by Toronto in 2008. He's a veteran guy, 32 years old. He's been in the league for a long time. 6'2", 225. Like, if you're adding to your bottom pair, there you go. Luke
Absolutely.
Schenn would be a great addition to the bottom pair for the Bruins, and he's a right shot, so he knocks Clifton out of that bottom pair right slot, makes Clifton the 7th D-man, and then you've got Schenn and Forbert as your bottom pair. Now again, Middleton
Yeah.
could fit that role if he can play the right side, but I'd rather have Luke Schenn being a right shot D-man.
1,000%. And he has playoff experience. I mean, look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning have done. He
Yep.
was a part of those teams. He was, his first playoff stint was with Philadelphia in 2013, 2014. Then he was on the 2015-16 LA Kings team that did they make it to the cup that year? Or was that the year after they made it to the cup?
Their last
Um,
cup was 2014, so that was a
okay, so
couple
that was the year
years
after.
couple
But even
years removed, but
But even still, he has, 16 points in 82 games, 8 goals, 8 assists. Offense is not his, calling card, so to speak. But he knows how to get it done. He's a solid defenseman. I would love him. And that would be a pretty good pickup for the Bruins, all things considered. You're getting, a veteran that is 32. He's not, too old to contribute. You're getting a playoff experience type of defenseman, and you're getting a guy that can, knows how to win Stanley Cups. So I would love that.
yeah, I don't know if Vancouver would want to give him up because
I don't
Vancouver's
know either.
actually still in the playoff race in the West. So Vancouver, there's been a lot of talk about the Canucks at the deadline and them possibly being sellers and whatnot. But with them still this close to making the playoffs, I don't think they're just going to outrightly sell at the deadline like they would if they were 12 or 15 points out. So Schenn may not be available, but that's the kind of guy being a right shot where he can take that bottom pair right side and really solidify it for the Bruins that I think would be a depth upgrade for Boston. Whereas Middleton being a left shot, unless he can play the offside, kind of doesn't add nearly as much value.
I would love for the Bruins to at least kick the tires on Luke Shen and see what's up because, you know, I would love that addition more than Middleton. Middleton, like we just talked about, doesn't move the needle for me. So the Bruins have a lot of different, what do I want to call it, kind of subplots here for this trade deadline. And I'll be interested to see what they do with each of them.
Definitely. So that's some trade deadline talk here. We're now less than 2 weeks away from the trade deadline, which is coming up on March 21st. We'll have to wait and see what Boston is able to pull off, but we're getting close now, so I would imagine that the moves are going to start to happen around the league here. And we're going to start to see some action as far as the trade market goes. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that. Now we can move on and take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Bruins. Obviously, they've been playing very well recently. They had a great road trip. Come back at home, tough loss in overtime on their first game back, but they continue on home ice here. We'll take a look at the next 4 games for the Bruins because, the Minnesota-Chicago games are back-to-back, so we might as well talk about them now. First game coming up tomorrow night, which will have already happened by the time that you guys see this episode because we're recording this on Wednesday, but Thursday night, March 10th, against the Chicago Blackhawks. Seeing Chicago for the first time this season on home ice feels like this is a game that Boston needs to win.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the last game Chicago played, they just beat the Ducks 8-3.
Killed the Ducks.
So yeah, this is a game that Boston needs to win. I think they can do it. I'm hesitant to call it a guaranteed win because nothing is guaranteed in the NHL. But, I love Chicago as a young team. I'm going to be really excited to watch this game. I'm thinking 2 points for the Bruins in this one. But like I said, I'm terrible at predictions. So, hopefully the Bruins can pull this one out on home ice. I like their chances.
Yeah, Chicago just had a massive win over the Anaheim Ducks, but they're well out of the playoff picture out west. They are not still in contention for making the playoffs. They've had a pretty bad year. This is a game that the Bruins need to make sure that they get 2 points out of. This is an important game to get 2 points out of, so I'm definitely expecting the Bruins to win that one. Their next game after Chicago is once again at home on Saturday night. The Boston Bruins against the Arizona Coyotes. And Arizona, they just destroyed the Detroit Red Wings. They're another team that well out of the playoff picture, one of the worst teams in the league, but recently has been kind of playing with that nothing to lose attitude and have pulled off some big wins. And again, I don't think this is going to be an easy game, but this is definitely a game that the Bruins should win.
9-2 was the score of their game against the Red Wings, and it's a time in the season where teams that are out of it, they still find a way to make the games count.
They're dangerous because they have that nothing to lose attitude.
They are dangerous. I mean, we saw it. The first week of February was it that the Bruins played Arizona last time? Didn't Arizona take them to overtime or something?
It was January 28th. It was right at the end of January. Boston just squeaked out a 2-1 win over Arizona January 28th. It was a very tightly contested game.
Can't take them lightly either. I mean,
nope.
Like you said, they're dangerous. They still, show their effort every single time they're on the ice. So, I'm gonna say the Bruins are gonna get a point out of this one.
Wow. Okay. See, I think that's a game that the Bruins really do need to win. Like, you've got to take advantage of these games against non-playoff teams. But I agree that Arizona is certainly going to give you a tough game and is going to make it difficult on you. But just my expectations for the Bruins are high that they've got to beat these teams that they should be beating.
There's always that one trap game though, and I think the Arizona game might be this one because of that plucky, nothing to lose attitude by the Coyotes.
All right, so after a couple more games at home, the Bruins go back out on the road, and they head to the Central Division next week. And their first game out in the Central is once again against the Chicago Blackhawks. So they play Chicago twice in 1 week here. Tuesday night, March 15th, 8:30 p.m. at Chicago. Back out on the road. Again, like I've been saying, these are teams that the Bruins should be beating, and teams that the Bruins need to pick up points against. But they're playing fairly well right now, and are not going to make it easy.
As a player, I would love to go to the United Center out in Chicago. So much history there with the Bulls and the Blackhawks. And, but aside from my personal wishes, I believe that the Bruins will win this one, 2 points. I don't know. I could see maybe 5-4. I'm terrible at predicting scores. I'll just stick with the points. But I see 2 points in this one. I think the Bruins win it in regulation and start off the road trip nicely.
All right, so even though we'll probably be recording again before this Minnesota game next Wednesday night, I still want to do it here just because it's a back-to-back game. Central Division, Wednesday night, March 16th at Minnesota. Wild have been kind of struggling recently, although they did pick up a nice win over the New York Rangers last night. But overall, they've been struggling recently. It's in Minnesota. This is not going to be an easy one. You know that the Wild are going to be looking to try and get back on track here and continue their march towards the playoffs in the Central. This is going to be a tough game. Minnesota and Boston played earlier in the season. It was a very nasty physical game between these two teams. I have a feeling that's probably going to be the case again in this one. And all in all, though, I feel like this is going to be probably one of the tougher ones here of the next week for Boston.
I remember that game. It was on ESPN, right? Wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And Matthew
this one's on
Boldy
TNT, I believe.
Scored a goal in that game. He scored the first goal of his career. The Massachusetts native Matthew Boldy did. But I think this one is a loss. It's on the road for Boston. Minnesota is a tough team, and they certainly gave the Bruins all they could handle the last time these two teams played. So I would chalk that one up as a loss because the Bruins are bound to have one over these next couple of days here, and playing in Minnesota is never easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's going to be a tough game for sure. Would love to see the Bruins be able to win it, but have to imagine the Wild are going to be pushing hard in that one because they're in a very tight Central Division right now. So, all in all, we got 4 games coming up here for the Bruins. Chicago and Arizona at home, and then Chicago, Minnesota on the road. 4 games, 8 possible points. Looking at this schedule, I would love to see the Bruins go 3-1.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'm going to say 3-1 for these next 4 games.
That would be nice. I got 5 possible points. I just see, a trap game, and like I said, we're getting to the point of the schedule where even the teams that may be out of it are down to give the teams that are in it a challenge. And so this is going to be one of the easier weeks for Boston, but it's still one that they should be ready for.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're going to see some tough games, but they do have games against teams that they should be beating. So you've got 2-1-1. I've got 3-1 over these next 4 games. We'll see how they do, but that's our look ahead to the upcoming week for Boston, and that is going to bring us now to the end of episode 58. Danny, once again, awesome to have you on. Thanks for talking some hockey today, and we got another big week of action coming up for the Bruins.
Thank you for having me, and we're getting closer to the playoffs. I can't wait. Let's just hope the Bruins can finish the deal and win the games they're supposed to.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping that they can keep playing the way that they have been, that they can keep putting some points on the board and gaining some ground in the standings in the Eastern Conference and secure that playoff spot so that we make sure we're playing in May when the playoffs begin. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for episode 58. Thank you guys so much for watching. Big shout out and thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them. Be sure to check out www.blackandgoldhockey.com to see all the great work from everybody at BNG. Great articles coming out every day written by the writers, podcast network with a bunch of great Bruins-related shows as well. And definitely awesome to show them some support. And also, don't forget about the links down in the description of the video, whether it's Boston Bruins apparel, whether it's NHL apparel from any of the 32 teams, or NCAA college apparel. It's all there down in the description, so please check those out. That's going to do it for this week. We'll be back next week with episode 59. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.